What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. So, something happened, and I want to share it with you. Let me see if you can tell me which radio show this is. Check it out.
Okay, so are you ready to dive into some seriously fascinating space stuff?
Always up for that.
Yeah.
What are we looking at today?
We're talking James Webb Space Telescope.
Oh, wow. Okay. The one giving us those crazy detailed pictures.
Oh, yeah. Turns out it might be caught in a web of intrigue way more intense than your average supernova.
Really? Okay, how so?
Well, on one hand, we're getting these stunning images of galaxies forming.
Right.
And on the other hand, we have these whispers of classified missions and data that just doesn't quite add up.
Yeah.
It's are we on the verge of unlocking the universe's secrets, or are we stumbling into a cosmic game of Clue?
Well, maybe we can unpack some of these for the listeners. I think this whole thing really got going with that journalist over at Psicoactivo Podcast.
Oh, yeah, the one who always has his ear to the ground in those,
Yeah, exactly. He's suggesting that folks in Congress are getting briefings about the James Webb Telescope and its observations, some behind closed doors.
See, that's what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
I love a good mystery, but the thing that really got me was his mention of this unnamed astronomer over in Europe claiming to have spotted inconsistencies in the publicly available data.
Interesting.
They're even going so far as to use the term covert operations.
Really?
Yeah, which I gotta say kind of sends chills down my spine.
Now, before we get too carried away with this idea of top secret space missions, it's important to remember that telescopes like James Webb are so complex. We're talking about an instrument capable of capturing light from billions of years ago.
I know, it's mind-boggling. But I guess what I'm trying to wrap my head around is how could there be inconsistencies in the data, and what would even count as inconsistent when we're talking about something as vast and mysterious as space?
That's a good question. See, astronomers rely on these really precise measurements and calculations to make sense of all the data that they collect, even tiny discrepancies, like a slight deviation in a star's position or an unexpected flicker in its brightness,
Okay.
And that can hold valuable clues about the universe's workings. Now imagine you're this astronomer, right? You're sifting through all this data, and you start noticing these patterns that just don't quite fit the expected models.
Yeah.
That's where those alarm bells might start going off.
I see. Okay, so are we talking about potential human errors here? Like someone accidentally, I don't know, spilled coffee on the control panel? Or are we venturing into more intentional territory?
Well, I mean, it's always possible that human error or even technical glitches could play a role. I mean, these things happen,
Right.
even with the most sophisticated technology. But the possibility, however remote, that some of these inconsistencies might be intentional is what makes this whole thing so captivating.
Okay.
And there's another layer to this, too, something else that makes this even more intriguing.
Oh, do tell.
This journalist also mentioned that space journalist Dan Strom confirmed that the James Webb Telescope does have classified missions.
Wait, hold on. So it's not just whispers and speculation. There are actually confirmed classified missions happening with this telescope.
That seems to be the case, at least according to Dan Strom.
Wow.
And you have to admit, it does make you wonder what they're looking at that we're not supposed to know about.
Okay, hold on a sec. This is where my head starts spinning. We've got this incredibly advanced telescope, capable of seeing practically back to the Big Bang, and it might be involved in some sort of classified government operation. It's like something out of a, I don't know, sci-fi thriller.
It does make you wonder if we're living in a science fiction novel. But here's the thing. The idea of classified space missions isn't totally out of left field. Governments have long recognized, the strategic importance of space. Think back to the Cold War, for example.
You're talking about those spy satellites, right? The ones secretly snapping pictures from orbit.
Exactly. Those programs were totally shrouded in secrecy. And for understandable reasons, right? I mean, they provided, vital intelligence during a time of intense global tension.
Okay, that makes sense. But we're not in the Cold War anymore. What could possibly be so secretive that we need the James Webb Telescope, of all things, to be involved?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's like finding this mysterious lockbox. You can't help but wonder what's inside, right? And, we can speculate, of course, and we will. But without any concrete evidence, it's difficult to say for sure what these classified missions, might entail.
So how do we even begin to unravel this? What would it take to separate fact from fiction in this whole James Webb saga?
Well, One way is to look at it from the perspective of all those astronomers and researchers, right? The ones vying for their chance to actually, use the James Webb Telescope. Telescope time is incredibly valuable. Researchers from around the world submit these really detailed proposals outlining all their research objectives, and it's all for a shot at collecting data with this incredible instrument. Now, imagine you're one of those researchers, and you notice these gaps or inconsistencies in the data that's been, made public.
You'd probably be wondering what you missed, right? Like, did someone forget to hit record during, I don't know, the most important part of the observation?
Exactly. Or even more intriguingly, was there something else going on during those observation windows? Something that wasn't meant for, public consumption. It's these questions, these discrepancies between the expected and the observed that make this whole situation so fascinating.
Okay, but let's play devil's advocate for a moment. What if these inconsistencies are nothing more than, well, human error? After all, scientists are only human, right?
Absolutely. Mistakes happen, especially when you're dealing with this cutting-edge technology and, just mind-boggling amounts of data. It's totally possible that what some are interpreting as evidence of covert operations could be explained by a simple miscalculation or a software glitch, or even just a misunderstanding of the data itself.
So how do we know which it is? I mean, do we just have to take it on faith one way or the other?
Not necessarily. This is where that healthy skepticism we talked about earlier comes in handy. It's crucial to approach these claims from both sides with a critical eye.
So what you're saying is, while we keep our eyes on the skies, we should also keep our feet firmly planted on the ground.
Precisely. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere between the, awe-inspiring images of distant galaxies and the whispers of government secrets, maybe there lies a truth that will change our understanding of the universe and, our place within it.
That is a truly tantalizing thought. But you know me, I can't help but gravitate towards the more mysterious side of things. Let's talk about this alleged object that's got everyone buzzing. The one that some believe the James Webb Telescope might be tracking. Is there any truth to that, or is it pure science fiction? Okay, so let's talk about this mysterious object. Is there any actual evidence suggesting it exists, or is this just someone's overactive imagination?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, right? The rumors, they do seem to have gotten a little out of control.
It's like that game of telephone we used to play, right?
Yeah.
The story starts one way and it ends up completely different.
Exactly. But the stakes are a little higher this time, right?
Yeah.
Even though the journalist himself, he acknowledges that this object, its existence is far from confirmed. But just the suggestion of it really seems to tap into those, those primal fears we have.
Oh, absolutely. It's like that feeling you get when you look up at the night sky and you wonder if we're actually alone, or even more unsettling, what if we're not alone and whatever's out there isn't so friendly?
It's that classic, that curiosity bundled with apprehension, that fear of the unknown.
Right. So do we just ignore the things that scare us, or do we confront them head on? How do we reconcile those two seemingly opposite impulses?
Well, that's where the critical thinking comes in, right? That healthy dose of skepticism. I mean, it's easy to get swept up in speculation and those, kind of sensationalized headlines we see.
Oh, yeah.
But we have to remember that these extraordinary claims, they require extraordinary evidence.
So we shouldn't just dismiss the possibility of this mysterious object, but we also shouldn't let our imaginations go completely wild, right?
Exactly. Let's not jump to conclusions before we have all the facts. Speaking of facts, there's something else we haven't really touched on yet, and this might help to kind of, put this into perspective a little bit.
Oh, okay, I'm all ears.
So remember earlier when we discussed, the James Webb Telescope possibly being used for classified missions?
Yeah.
Well, let's kind of dig a little deeper into the history of these types of classified space programs.
You mean like those Cold War spy satellites?
Exactly. I mean, those programs were totally secret. And it makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Governments, they often prioritize national security.
Right.
Even if it means keeping some things from the public.
Okay, yeah, I get it. But this isn't the Cold War. What could be so secretive, so important, that we need the James Webb Telescope for this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, we may never know the full extent of these classified missions, but, their existence alone really highlights this fundamental tension between scientific advancement, right, and government secrecy.
So this James Webb Telescope, this incredible instrument of discovery, it could be caught in this tug of war between unraveling the universe's mysteries and safeguarding national security.
Yeah, exactly. And that tension, it raises questions about, who gets to decide who controls access to this knowledge.
Right. It's a lot to think about. So where do we go from here? What's the takeaway for everyone listening, for all of us pondering these cosmic possibilities?
I think sometimes the most important discoveries, they aren't about those concrete answers.
Right.
It's about asking the right questions.
Yeah.
And I think this whole James Webb thing has given us a lot of questions to think about.
It really has. It's like we've gone on this journey to the edge of the universe, and we find ourselves kind of staring even deeper into the unknown.
Exactly. And as we continue to explore the cosmos, I think it's important that we think about the ethical and the philosophical implications of what we find.
Yeah.
The James Webb Telescope, it's shown us this vast universe, but it's also kind of reminded us that the biggest mysteries are sometimes a lot closer to home than we think.
Well said. So, until next time, everyone, keep looking up at the stars, keep asking those really tough questions, and never lose that sense of wonder.
Okay, so what do you think? The story caught fire, I guess. I mean, we already knew that. I still have more information to share with you guys, but I am waiting for some confirmation from people in Europe and people in DC. That is going to come next week. I thought it could be possible for this week, but my contact is going to DC next week to talk to everybody. I already gave you the update on Matthew Pines, which I think is a good update. And, here's the deal. This radio show was created by AI. Yeah. This just goes to show how rapidly AI is advancing. And that technological singularity is within less than a decade from us. And I can't help but wonder if this technological singularity is tied to getting to know the truth about the UFO phenomenon. Because right now, anything is possible, really. We could be dealing with black tech from the government, the most prosaic explanation you can think of. We could be dealing with AI itself, or we could be dealing with some NHI that wants to either make contact or something else. The more outlandish for me, and I'm sorry for everyone who's religious, the more outlandish explanation of this is the religious part. That there's a lot of people who seem to think that this has to do with ancient scripture. And Ross Coulthard, for example, has talked about the Collins Elite. These people seem to be convinced of something related to ancient scripture that is linked to the UFO phenomenon. And I think that is extremely concerning. I'm going to tell you why. Because I think that these ancient scriptures, the Torah, the Quran, the Bible, they all originated from arguably the same ancient scripture, which is the Sumerian tablets. These tablets also have the flood myth. They also have the Nephilim, which is like giant hybrids. The angels and the demons, they have different representations in the tablets, but they also exist in all of these ancient scriptures. And when the Abrahamic religions were originated, each of them got their own Bible per se. And I will dare say, none of them are actual translations of the original text. They are all interpretations. And these interpretations have been subject to major disagreement and even wars for millennia now. So I happen to think that these ancient scriptures and all of the Abrahamic monotheistic religions were created from a fallacy. And I am sorry for people who don't like my take on this, but there's a lot of evidence to support this. I'm just going to give you a couple. One of them has already been contested so many times, and it's still one of the most direct attempts to translate the tablets from Sumer. I'm obviously talking about Zechariah Sitchins and about the Annunaki. But these translations have been contested for a while now. And they're not necessarily completely accurate. There are another two examples that are current. One of them is the translation from the ancient Greek scripture, which comes from Dr. Hillman, who is a scholar, a philologist, who has a PhD on ancient Roman pharmacology. I'm going to leave a link in the description for his very, very controversial interview with Danny Jones. A lot of people who are Christian got really upset that Jones gave Hillman a platform. You'll see why. Because his claims are really out there and they leave Jesus Christ in a really bad position. The other, a little less controversial translation comes from the Aramaic ancient text. And this was a project that was assigned to Italian translator from the Vatican, Mauro Biglino. He has multiple books after he was excommunicated by the Vatican because his translations were so literal that they completely deviated from what we know now as the Old and New Testament, the Christian Bible or the Catholic Bible. Mauro talks about the Elohim, who are plural, and he makes like a point to say that the Elohim is a plural word. And he has been attacked for this multiple times. Mauro says that this ancient scripture does not talk about God. It talks about gods or godlike beings, the Elohim. And if this translation is taken in the literal sense, it means that these godlike beings, who Sitchin thinks they came from the sky, the Annunaki, which means beings that came from the sky, literally, it means that monotheistic religions came from a fallacy. And I don't know, what do you guys think about that? Especially those of you who are religious and have followed organized religion throughout your entire lives and you grew up with this. There's a portion of the Collins elite who actually think that these scriptures are linked to the UFO phenomenon. And there are more like end of the world type scenarios that I don't think it's positive to peddle, because for starters, there's no proof that this actually happened. There's only that ancient scripture where everything originates from. But also the Library of Alexandria was burned down to ashes, and there was a lot of information there that we will never know about. There's a lot of information also in the Vatican that they are safekeeping for their own reasons that humanity may never know about either. So I don't know how I would feel if I was a devout religious person from any of these monotheistic religions, especially from the Abrahamic ones, because if these scriptures are literal as Mauro says they are, it means that all of these religions are not really that true. They're just interpretations. At least their scriptures are. And I want to hear your thoughts, what you think about this. Because Ross Coulthard has said a number of times, and also Lou Elizondo said a number of times, that these Collins elite are very serious about what they think is happening. We've seen Tucker Carlson, who seems convinced that this is supernatural and spiritual in nature, the UFO phenomenon. I think that's what he means. And there's the more scientific part of this, who don't want to even entertain the idea that this may be spiritual or interdimensional, which, if you take interdimensional to a more religious context, it means realms, not dimensions per se, you know? I want to know what you guys think about that. I happen to think that it is really impossible to say what's real and what's not. I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, if it ever happens. But I think there's only like a select few people in the world who have a better picture of this. What I want to do is potentially try to hash them out and see if they're willing to talk about this in the open. So we know where this fear that they have towards the UFO phenomenon comes from. Because right now, I don't think that their belief is true. And I'm talking about the Collins elite. And any other person who thinks the UFO phenomenon is religious or, you know, I need proof in order to believe that. So let's talk if you want. Because I'm not the only one who wants answers for this. I'm not the only one who wants you to lay all your cards on the table and you explain to the people why you think the way you think. Why? We all want to know. And yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know what you guys think about this eerie AI radio show that I just showed you. AI is going to places that honestly I never imagined. They even got, like any human would, Dan Setterstrom's last name wrong, which a lot of people I've heard get it wrong. That was kind of funny. Even human error they can now imitate. That's scary. So yeah, if you like the content you see, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. I would ask you to please also hit the bell notification so you can see when a new video comes out. And that's like the best you can do to support the channel. But if you want to support the channel in any other way, I'm going to leave a few links in the description so you can support it by either donating, get yourself something, or get something for the podcast. There's like an Amazon wish list there that you can change the language on the page. And any help you give the channel will be greatly appreciated, always. And without further ado, I'll see you guys until tomorrow's video. Bye.